Welcome back, everybody, to Leaning into Lent, this series that we're doing here at Browncroft, where we're focusing on a spiritual practice every week and looking at how we as a church can really engage in that practice to bring us closer to Jesus. And so today I have alongside of me a close friend of mine. Also, to those of you in the student world, someone who you know and love, Mr. Aaron McGinnis.
Yes.
Yes.
How
Welcome.
you doing? Yeah, it feels good.
Good.
Love the stools.
Yeah, the stools is fantastic.
Yeah, great.
So today we are going to be talking about the practice that all of us just look forward to a ton, which is fasting. And really a lot of Lent is really geared toward this aspect of fasting, but we as a church are taking it, a week to really say we want to take this seriously. But before we even get there, how have you experienced this practice in your own life?
Yeah, fantastic question. The first time I even ran into this practice, which is funny because it used to be such a regular thing in the Jewish communities and things like that, was a 30-hour famine. Where we took 30 hours to not eat, fast, right, which is what it means. And the whole point of that was to focus on God during that time, to take those hunger pains that you're feeling, and when you feel them, instead of directing them to being sustained by food, but instead to be sustained by God, and to take your eyes off of the material world and focus them on your relationship with the Creator. So experienced it in like 7th grade, never did it again, and not until recently have my wife and I had more conversations and have been trying to practice this and build the spiritual muscle of fasting more. And when you look in the Bible, you see that fasting generally has its roots in not eating. I think that's what the literal word means. It's like take a break from eating, which you see a lot in the Old Testament and the New Testament too. And it always has to do with focusing your eyes on the good things of God, the spiritual things, not the material things. So honestly, it's a practice that I think we need to pick back up. I think it's very important. And from the few times that we've tried to do it, I'm like, okay, this is something I understand why it's even needed, maybe even necessary. But I don't think we do it all that often.
Right. So let me stop you there. As you have just started to do this more in your life, what are some of the things that you're experiencing as you're fasting? Like, what are some of the things that are whether it's spiritual or?
Yeah, I think the implications go pretty far, because when we, even if say we do a food fast or something like that, you realize just how much you rely on food to bring comfort, to bring sustenance, to bring joy and energy. And you realize you do put a lot of faith in what's going into your body. And just feeling those hunger pains, having it be a trigger for praying for a specific situation, praying for a specific area in your life where you want to draw close to God, really refocuses your entire day or entire however long you're fasting. And so it's a very powerful spiritual practice. I think too is you can kind of, I don't want to use the word extrapolate, but I'm going to.
You're going to. You just did.
Extrapolate beyond just food fasting, which is primarily what we see in the Bible. But I do think there's many areas in our own lives where we find sustenance, or we find our identity or our value. And to take a break and abstain from those things, I mean, simple as your phone. And every time you want to reach for it to fill the time, you go, you know what? I'm going to not reach to my phone. Instead, I'm going to reach towards God. And I think there's many practical ways. I mean, it could even differ for each of us. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's your phone. Maybe you find your value, like I did once, in working out and getting a really buff body. So maybe you take a month away from that to remind yourself that your value doesn't come from your physical appearance or makeup or whatever it may be, watching the news, whatever you turn to gain either value or just fill the time or find that you're filled up with. Sometimes it's good to take a fast, to abstain from that, to refocus yourself on Christ, especially in seasons when you're feeling distant from our Creator. So,
Right.
So many implications. I would encourage anyone, especially during Lent season, to find those things. Have honest talks with yourself, with mentors, with your family. As much as an individual practice, could it also be a family practice? Could it also be, could it be a communal practice of what are those things that we are leaning into maybe a little bit too much for our sustenance, and how can we use those to actually trigger us to turn towards God instead?
That's a great setup. So what do you think, as you use your imagination a little bit, like, what do you think it could look like for us at Browncroft in this coming week to even, as a community, to say, we're going to do this, we're going to turn from what we get sustenance, from what we get comfort from what we turn to for, naturally, and we're going to use those opportunities to turn to God. What would it look like?
Oh, I mean, there's tons of ideas what we could do as like a broader church community, whether we do choose a day that we're going to do a 24-hour fast, or as long as you can. It's a spiritual muscle.
Yep.
So it might start off weak. You might really feel it. But could we choose a day where we go from dinner to dinner or something like that, where we are choosing to pray for something very specific, choosing to meditate on a verse every time we feel those hunger pains? Could it be that we make a commitment that we're going to get together with a mentor or a close relationship and tell them the thing that we're going to try to separate ourselves from, and check in with that? Maybe we can make a commitment as a church to do that. There are many things. Could it be that Browncroft is not posting on social media, no podcasts, there's no online service because we're going to take a break from screens? I don't know. You could really, the power of the community going in one direction with that could be a really cool focus. So many different ways to do it. But I think even starting with the clear biblical one of fasting from food, just start there.
Yeah.
Maybe, and see where it takes you.
Wow. Well, thanks, Aaron. Thank you not only for sharing the vision, but for setting the example as well.
Even though I'm not supposed to talk about fasting, that's in the Bible too.
That's in the Bible, but hey, it helps the rest of us when we have someone to say, hey, they've done it, I can do it too. So
and don't always succeed. I'll say that too. It's a muscle.
It's a muscle. It's a muscle. It's beautiful. Well, thanks for sharing with us. Appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you right back here next week.
All right.